We're parents, teachers, and educators, and like you, we're passionate about restoring our culture for Christ. This is Veritas Vox, the voice of classical Christian education.
Welcome to Veritas Vox, the voice of classical Christian education. Today we have a really fun episode for you, I think. I have my daughter-in-law, Lexi Detweiler, and one of my favorite teachers at Veritas, Yolanda Statema, here with us. And we're going to be talking about something that I get asked about a lot, and I know our phones always, people on our phones get asked, and that is, what is memory period and why is it important? So, Lexi, do you have anything that you wanted to start off by talking a little bit about, how getting to know Yolanda and that kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah. And about starting, actually this year is my daughter's first year in online classes, and it has been quite a whirlwind the first few weeks. Just getting used to everything.
I can attest to that.
Yes. And I can see how a memory period class would definitely benefit her and my first grade son, who's not in online classes, but still having to learn the chants and the songs and everything. So, yeah, and I learned that Yolanda teaches the class, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yolanda, I know people will be interested to hear a little bit about your background and what led you into classical education. So if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and about your teaching background.
Yeah, sure. I think my first introduction to classical education was through my parents. They had heard about classical when I was living overseas in England. And when I came home, they had told me about classical education, so I looked into it. And then I started teaching kindergarten in a classical Christian school. And I absolutely fell in love with it. I fell in love with the purposefulness of the curriculum, just the way it was planned out. I could see already, and we were just a K-8 school, but I could see already the steps, the progressive steps of what we did in kindergarten and first grade mattered for the rest. And the more I got into classical and then went and taught at a much larger, well-established classical Christian school, I just felt like I'd found my niche. It was just, it was wonderful just to have that plan and that purpose behind the curriculum. Everything was done thoughtfully, and that made a big impact on me. I absolutely loved it and haven't turned back since.
Yolanda, I know one thing that everybody always wants to know is, how did you become familiar with Veritas? So if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yes. Veritas to me was a gift from God. My parents were getting to the point where they needed a little bit more help at home, and so I was really happy where I was, but it was time to make a move, and I wanted to be closer to them, and I knew I wanted to stay, if possible at all, in classical Christian education. So, and someone told me that Veritas had started an online school, and so I contacted for, I think, just the office, and that was it. And I haven't turned back since. So I love it. I mean, my parents aren't with me anymore, but I just, love being online, love having my students all over the world. And so just keep going. The community is great too, so
It is.
Lots of benefits to the online world.
Yeah.
So I love it. Absolutely love it.
That's great. Well, I said we were going to talk about memory period. Lexi, when you first heard about memory period, what did you as a homeschooling mom think? Like, did you have any idea what it was, or?
No, I didn't have any idea. And I also noticed it was not required. So as a first-time homeschool mom, I always think, okay, I'm just going to do what I have to do. And since it wasn't required, I didn't even look into it. So I didn't know what the benefits were. So can you explain a little bit?
Exactly.
Because I kind of know, but I also would love a really good explanation of what memory period is and how you fill up the time in class.
Okay, so classes fly by because we cover 8 different subjects in every class. So every week there's a certain amount of material that is learned for 8 different subjects. So it's designed to be a support for, let's say, the kids taking grammar. We learn all the grammar jingles. We learn all 5 history songs. So the thing is, you're not taking 5 history courses in that year, but let's say we're doing the Middle Ages song, for some kids that's going to be review, for some they'll have it in the next year or two. So it's designed to support, but also to increase their overall knowledge, their
Right.
basic grammatical knowledge, so every subject has their grammar stage, right? So we are laying the foundation. We're helping them learn the math facts. We do all 5 history songs for each of the levels. We do lyrical life science. So we're learning the vocabulary of science. We're learning all the classifications. Did I mention math facts? We do all the math facts. We do a little bit with metrics, just to throw some extra things in there that they're going to come across. The grammar jingles, Shirley English jingles, we do them all, both years. We do Westminster Catechism. Some families are doing that, others are not. The kids really enjoy, we study it a little bit too, because that's new for a lot of them. Plus, we learn the original language, so they need to understand it. And we put everything that we can to music. Not everything is music, but that when you put something to music, it really sticks in your head.
Right.
So that's our idea. This memorization is so important to classical education. So it's memorizing so much material. I mean, these younger children are able to absorb an incredible amount of material. It took me several years before I learned all 5 history songs. They do it in a matter of weeks for each song. It's just amazing how much they can take, and they're like little sponges. And so why not give it to them when they're able to do that? They don't understand it all right away, but that's okay. We've given them those foundational facts, and we learn all the countries in the world and things like that. So we give that to them now. They'll build upon it in the next couple of years.
Right.
One of the things that I've found with children is it's a lot more fun when they do it together, right? So I know
Yeah,
Lexi,
absolutely.
will try to have everybody do their grammar chants together, or everybody sing their history song. But when they come together like that, it just have you found that it builds momentum for them?
It's just a lot of fun. And it's, studying and drilling like that is not so much fun on your own. But when we do it together, and we do it with the music, and we do it with games, and I quiz them, and they can draw on the board, and they can scribble out words and try to fill in the blanks, so there's a lot of different ways to help them memorize. And then I ask them, to spend about 15 or 20 minutes a day just drilling the things. They have their list for the week. And that's a great thing too, because they're learning that consistent, just a little bit every day. And it's amazing how much they can take in. So,
And just like a normal class, are there assessments and things?
yeah, there are. About every 4 weeks, we have what we call a recitation, which is their test. And they do it at home with their parents, because there's no way that I could physically listen to all of them in a classroom. So they do it at home, which is great. Some parents choose to do like a show out of it and say, okay, let's go through and you recite everything you've memorized. So yeah, there are those accountabilities, every 4 weeks, and then we start the next 4 weeks fresh, and so yeah, there is definite accountability to it, which is a good thing as well. And especially at the beginning, of their schooling, to have those set points. Yeah.
That reminds me what you were saying about having a show, the parents having a show. My grandmother was so impressed with my daughter when she was probably, I think she was 6 years old when she started the Bible course.
Yeah.
Oh no, when she was in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And she was singing the books of the Old Testament song.
Yeah.
And My grandmother, every time somebody would come over,
Did
she
you
would say, okay, guys, we're going to sing the books of the Bible
Oh.
song. And
Yes.
they all did it. Even my son, who was probably 4, they all did it
Mhm.
together, and they did a little show, and everybody loved it.
Yeah.
It's the greatest thing.
Yeah.
So I have to say too, I always tell the parents this, it's a family class. You know, we only allow the children who are registered for the class to sit in front of the computer. But when they're practicing, everybody in the family hears those songs.
Yeah.
You know, so I have had parents send me videos of, you know, their little toddlers singing grammar jingles as they were making lunch, you know, and the children in the background too. Last year we had a young boy, he was reciting, he didn't know it, but his siblings were behind him just dancing up a storm because the music was so fun. You know, so I always say it's a whole family class, really. You can't help but learn these things.
Right.
And I just see what a difference it makes for children long term. I mean, if you talk to any omnibus teacher, they will tell you the kids that have this stuff memorized and know it, it makes such a difference just in their ability to contextualize and put things in order and know what happened when. You know, I can remember with my sons who are now in their 30s going to the Smithsonian, and there was it was the Air and Space Museum, and there was a plane from World War II, and one of them just happened to see the date, and they screamed out, you know, their chant from that part of the song
That's
about
right.
World War II and the date. And we had a docent with us, and they looked at me like, what in the world, like what little kid knows this? And I'm like, she's like, you know what? And so then they all start singing the history song, and then the docent really looks at me like, because this was back before you know, classical ed's a little bit more well known now, but back then, learning that kind of chronological history, you know, we were forging new paths by doing that. And so they were just shocked, but I've just seen what that does for students long term when they get that, you know, they have it for life then, right?
Yes. I use it all the time myself. I tell the kids, I said, I'll be out for a walk, and all of a sudden one of the songs will pop in my head. No, or I'll wake up and something's been in my brain, you know, and I wake up singing a song of maybe geography or one of the catechism songs. It definitely sticks with you.
It does.
So I think parents will enjoy it as much as the kids do.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to have Lexi, I'm going to prod her with this question, but she happens to have a little boy who
my son hates songs. He doesn't hate music. He loves music. He loves dancing. But when I turned on the phonics songs,
oh my goodness,
the geography songs in the car, he will scream and tell me to turn it off.
He'll say, just say it, Mimi. Just say it. Don't sing it. Just say it.
And I don't know even what type of learning style that is. Maybe you know, like why it's really bothering him, but he's not really into it. So how can I get him excited about it?
Yeah.
Because I know the benefits of it, and I know that he would really do well if he could memorize it. But I mean, maybe the chants, but still.
Yeah, so I always have kids that are like that in class, you know, where they say, I just don't like to sing. And I say, you know what, it's okay. They're hearing the music anyway, Lexi. So they're getting it anyway. But if they're not comfortable singing on the mic, I'll just have them chant it. I say, you know, it works as well to put something to a rhythm, you know, so, and I'll encourage them like for math or anything. I was just doing it in geography. The other day, we were trying to memorize, you know, latitude and longitude and prime meridian and the equator. And so I just put it to row, row, row your boat. And I did the longitude to London Bridge is falling down because longitude is in London, right? So, and I just said, do it like this, make up your own tune then, or make up your own rhythm, or go and jump rope or something to do your math facts, or skip counting. Just be as creative as you want. I said, even when you're doing a motion, it's helping you memorize.
Absolutely.
So if they're not comfortable with singing, I can't make them sing. You know, everybody has their different thing that they enjoy, and so just get creative. Yeah.
That's good.
As a special education teacher, I always, get this question, well, my child just can't memorize. What do you do? How do you handle students like that in the class when parents come to you and say that?
To be honest, it doesn't happen often.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, and sometimes it's more the students that are special education students
Mhm.
that thrive on the
Mhm.
memorization.
Oh,
So we we use a lot of multisensory things.
exactly.
No, I mean
Yep.
it's seeing it, it's hearing it, it's
Mhm.
saying it. If you put motions to it, you're moving to it.
Yeah.
Uh, that kind of reaches out to a whole
Mhm.
lot of different
Mhm.
learning styles.
Right.
Mhm.
So yeah, I have not had that
Yeah.
question come up very often.
Well, over the years, and I always tell parents, I look at special education a little bit differently, and that I'm not just looking at it for today, right? So my question that I always ask is, what do they need when they're 30 years old? I just one day picked 30 because that's when everybody's on their own, right? So what do they need? And I've just seen the importance of even a child that does have a diagnosis that I know memorization is hard. Sometimes even I'll just have cue cards that I give them to help trigger things. So they might not be able to give me, let's say, the entire sentence jingle right away as quickly as everybody else. But if I give them cue cards that help them remember, um, then they will. And so I don't see that as a crutch in the sense of eventually we're getting rid of those cue cards. It might take them a little bit longer. But what I always tell parents is, it may be hard and we may have to find some tools to help make it work, but in the
Right.
long run, it is like so worth it because this is a skill they need when they're older. And so doing it now when they're young, learning how to um, use what God's given them, right? In a
Yeah.
way that they can and learn how to work with it is so important. And it also, those children that it is extra hard, when they get it, they're the
Hmm.
way it makes them feel about it.
The
I mean,
reward is even
it
greater. Yeah.
is, it
Yeah.
is. It's just so
Yeah.
incredible. And it lets them know, hey, I can do this. The world may be telling me I can't do this, but I can. And so I
Yeah.
always tell everybody, teachers, parents, whatever, may be twice as hard, but it is so worth the effort. It really is.
And that's the beauty of homeschooling as well, Lori, because
Yes.
we can cater to
Yep.
whatever that child needs,
Right.
So we work with mom and say, okay, well, this is going to help, so let's just change that a little bit for them so that they can have that success, So that's the wonderful thing of homeschooling. It's like
Yeah, that's
cater
great.
the education and the way it's done. And I think VSA is fantastic at working with families, to accommodate and to make sure that that child gets the best thing for them.
Mhm.
So can you, speaking of homeschooling and and fitting everything in, first of all, what grade level is this recommended for? Like,
Yeah.
is it too late if I just started school with Veritas, I've just started classical school with like a sixth grader? Is it too late for them to do
Mhm.
this class?
It's not. My hesitation with, say, a sixth grader is that they're going to have a lot of adjustments anyway coming into classical
Mhm.
Christian education, unless they're coming from a classical background.
Right.
True.
So there's going to be a lot of new material for them. The rigors of it, I mean, we're not ashamed to say we are rigorous and it is work. Memory period is work. There's quite a lot to do if you stick with it. And I encourage the kids all the time, stay with it day by day so that at the end of the week you can check all the boxes on the course assignment sheet, because if you do get behind, then it can be overwhelming,
Mhm.
so I think the younger they are, the better. So
Yeah.
like memory period 1, I think our recommendation is like 8 to 10 years old.
Right.
So I would say if you could do memory period 1, like second and third grade, and memory period 2, third and fourth, then you've got a really strong foundation
Mhm.
to build upon. and you've got those core things.
Right.
And then when work starts to get a little bit more in 5th and 6th grade, then you've got that foundation already. We don't do a memory period 3, so it's just the 2 cycles that we go through. I think that's really beneficial.
Okay.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
then
I've had 6th graders for sure. I've had
yeah.
even some students that were older than that, where English wasn't their first language, and so they were learning, a lot of the basic things for the first time. So it was very beneficial for them. I would say the younger, the better.
Right.
Okay.
And
And
I would say for the
yeah.
parent who hasn't done it and they come in from the side, I always say taking memory period class might not be the wrong thing, but that doesn't mean you can't slowly memorize these things and add them to,
Yeah,
when a child is taking, let's say, grammar and writing, and they're starting off in 6th grade, it's a lot to memorize. You look at the difference between a child who's taken memory period for a couple years, and knows all their chants and knows all of that. They're really learning how to work with that material. Whereas the
right.
6th grader, not only do they have to learn how to work with it, but now they've got to memorize all these chants, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yes, yeah,
what I tell people is, if that's where you're at, go ahead and start working on memorizing these things, but you might not get it all in, right?
Mhm.
But
right.
some is better than none, is the way I
Yeah.
look at it, right?
Right.
And
So,
sometimes you can I have had students where they had a lot of other things, but their moms wanted them to do the memory
yeah,
period. And then they did what they could of it,
right.
to get themselves going. So, and that works as well.
Yeah.
Whatever is best for that child and that family.
One
So,
of the last things I wanted to talk about, and it wasn't, on an outline that we had, but I know that I get this question, so that's why I'm going to ask it. There are some curriculum out there in grammar school that have such a heavy emphasis on memory that everything else gets excluded almost. And so one of the things that I've found is this is foundational, but it's not the end of everything, right? So like you were talking about the Westminster Catechism, just memorizing those is not enough.
right.
The purpose of memorizing them is so that you have them to draw upon, right? And so if
Absolutely.
all
Yeah.
I do is have a child memorize a sentence is complete with 5 simple rules anyway, but they can't write a sentence, it
Right.
doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. And so
Right.
we see children all the time that we test coming in that they can do all their chants because they've been doing
Mm,
that for years, but they can't write a paragraph, right? And
right.
so talk a little bit about how this is foundational, but it's not the end goal, even in grammar school,
Right.
right?
Right. So I'll start that off with a little story. When I was teaching 1st grade, it was my first year teaching the grammar jingles.
Mhm.
And so I had taught the kids the noun jingle. And one day I just said, okay, so what's a noun? And they looked at me like I had 2 heads,
Right.
but they could sing the jingle inside and out.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we hadn't stepped back and said, okay, now we need to use that jingle
Right.
Right.
to figure out this sentence. And then we were just getting into the diagramming sentences, and the question answer flow and this, that, and the other. But it was such an eye opener to me. And I said, yeah,
Right.
we can learn all these songs and they can memorize them, but this is the beginning point. I'm helping them learn the jingles, but when they're in grammar class and writing class, they're using that knowledge. They're putting it into practice, so to speak.
Right.
So in that way, I kind of see we're the support. We're just kind of give them that foundation, but they have to know how to use it then. And that's what develops over time as well within the classical system. They don't understand a lot of the things that they're memorizing
No.
yet, but they have them in the memory bank, so that as they grow and they go through their classes and their grade levels, and then as they get into the dialectic stage too, where the understanding and the
Mm.
reasoning starts to come more and the logic fits in, then they have those bits of knowledge to draw on.
Right.
Whereas if they don't have those things, they're really starting from scratch. So
Right.
we're giving them the basic knowledge, but they
Mhm.
have to figure out.
They have to
They
use
have
it.
to learn how to put it into
Right.
practice.
I came in the other day and my grandson slapped a purple sticky note on me, and I'm like, what is this? And I looked around my house and there were sticky notes everywhere. Well, he had been doing his noun jingle, and she
Yes.
had him
Mhm.
using his noun jingle. A noun is a person, place, or thing. So
Yeah,
we were putting, purple sticky notes on people, yellow
Yeah.
sticky notes on, but it was
that's right.
it was so great because I just run into so many people that their emphasis in grammar stage is just on memorization without realizing that that is just enough. And if that's really what you do most of your time in
Yeah.
grade school, they're not going to be able to go into
No.
dialectic stage secondary school and do well, right? There's
Right.
just so
Yeah.
much more that's out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's why I take the time to explain the catechism class,
Right.
the questions with them,
Right.
especially for the ones who aren't doing that at home or in church. What good is it if they're memorizing words? They
Nothing.
might remember it when they're older and say, oh, that's what that means,
Yeah,
but I need to explain that to them now,
absolutely.
at their grade level, at where they understand it. And then they memorize it, and hopefully that will stay with them, that they draw on it again in the future. And I
That's
think,
great.
that goes with all the subjects we do.
Mm. And
Mhm.
Alexi, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to this today?
The only other, it's just a practical question that I had was, how would I fit this class into my already full load of classes?
Yeah,
When I feel
this,
like I'm struggling to get everything done, maybe it helps. Maybe it helps with all the other classes to go a little bit faster. But how
yeah.
do you recommend that somebody fit this class into their schedule?
Hmm. So this class, I think one of the benefits is the daily routine of it. And that's establishing good work habits, just a regular everyday 5, well, I would say like 15 to 20 minutes a day would be fantastic, and it's amazing how much you get done in 15 to 20 minutes. So some families I know do it first thing in the morning before they get started. They just go through and they recite and they sing, and then they go off on the rest of their day. So the kids are fresh then as well. So I think the morning is a great time. Um, Families are incredibly creative. I once had a family where they had special markers that they could put the catechism question up on the mirror in the morning, and then they would erase words every day. We call that the scribble game, till they had that question memorized for the week. And at that time we were doing 2 a week. Now we just do the 1. So creativity does help, but I think just setting aside that, let's say 20 minutes, a day, you'll be amazed
I
how
used to
much you
always
can
do it
get
in the
done.
car. That was when we were in our
Yes.
car so much that my boys
Yes.
knew that the minute we hit the car, that was the first thing we were going to do, was just go through our catechisms. And they weren't allowed to be loud in the car, but during that time they were allowed to be as loud as
Yeah.
they wanted. Therefore, they thought that was a good thing. I had 4
Yeah.
boys, so they were always loud and getting scolded to please not be loud. So I let
Yeah.
them scream and shout those jingles as loud as they wanted. And
Yeah.
I would
And
do it.
we put everything in a binder. So at the
Yep.
beginning of the year, they have the words for everything that we memorized for the year.
Right.
So they put it in a really thin binder. And I said, that's always great to take with you wherever you are.
Yeah.
So if you have, a sibling has a dentist appointment, take it with you while you're waiting, sing a few songs, do it in the
Yeah.
car, going to, so it's just really making the most of those extra times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Great. Well, Yolanda, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that this is a question that I get asked a lot, and I hope that this is helpful. I think it was helpful
Very helpful
for
for me.
Lexi to hear as a
Good.
homeschooling mom, so I'm sure it will
Yeah.
be for others. And just thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. And
Really?
if you like what you hear, just leave us a comment. Or if you have a suggestion for a topic you'd like to have covered, you can leave us a comment on veritaspress.com/vox, veritaspress.com/VOX.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.